campaign rally in Illinois yesterday. We're going to talk about this all on our roundtable now, joined by our chief political analyst, Matthew Dowd, national correspondent for the Washington Post, Mary Jordan, Reihan Salam, executive editor of the National Review and author of Melting Pot or Civil War, A Son of Immigrants Makes the Case Against Open Borders, former Trump Homeland Security Advisor Tom Bossert, and Democratic strategist, former DNC Chair Donna Brazille. Matt, I said at the top of the show, we shouldn't be surprised by this. All the events of this week, were they inevitable?
I think we should be surprised that something like this takes place in America in the course of the last week, but I think much of it's been predictable in this, and the times we're in and where we are today. I'll quote the philosopher Yoda, which says the path to the dark side is fear. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. And I think we're at a moment in time where we have to speak compassionately, clearly, and calmly in the times we're in. And I think our leaders, and I would put specific responsibility on the president, that he has an obligation to try to rid us of much of this tribalism. And I think what he's done over the course of the last few years is help foment this. I'm not saying he's responsible for what happened in Pittsburgh. He's not responsible for what happened with the bombs that were sent. He's not responsible for what happened at the supermarket. But all of those have a commonality. A white national supremacist shot 2 blacks at a supermarket. A white national supremacist sent 17 IEDs across the country to Democratic leaders. A white nationalist supremacist just killed 11 Jewish people in a synagogue in Pittsburgh. And in the course of that, I think the president has not actually allocated resources to deal with it in the right way. And he also has not spoken in the right way in the course of this that has diminished the hate.
Tom, you had to work on domestic terror when you worked for President Trump as Homeland Security Advisor. How do you respond?
Yeah, well, I'm sad to hear it all. To be honest, even this morning, the lead into this was a focus on the president's comments as he walked out to the helicopter, instead of the focus on the quote I was hoping to see, in which he condemns anti-Semitism and violence in this country. And so it's a hard time to claim he's got a big
wait a second.
Big megaphone.
That was his first response. That was his instinctive response to what happened.
No,
but what he then said in the speech was what was scripted for him.
I don't believe that's accurate. First off, he has control over what's scripted in those speeches.
You're saying that wasn't accurate? That was his first response?
No, because it wasn't his first response. It was on his way out, a response to a question thrown at him about gun control. So the question was already political, and the reporters in the gaggle were saying, what are your thoughts on gun control in response to this issue? His actual response to the American people was that we have no tolerance for violence in this country or anti-Semitism. To be honest, whether you play it or not or agree with me or not, that's what I want to promote today.
But Tom, when a child has an absent parent, the other parent steps up, or the sibling steps up.
Yep.
But when the country is going through a lot of pain and strife, you look for the president to be that parental figure. And yesterday, I think, at that moment, he was not the parent we needed. He was not the person that could heal us, that could talk about the pain. He runs away from his responsibility as a leader. We're all leaders. We all have voices. And his voice is the loudest voice at a moment like this. A moment, George, when our leaders, our former presidents, regardless of their party, they were elected by the entire American people. Their lives were at stake, the lives of our Attorney General, the lives of members of Congress, the lives of people who are just regular people.
People in the media.
And people in the media.
And people at this table.
But when you're out talking to voters, because we're days away from a very important election, what they say is the country is in need of repair. And what they want is a repairman or a repairwoman to fix this. And I think the 2020 election is going to end up actually being on this point.
People do say that, but do they vote to back up what they say is one of my questions.
Well, it depends on who we're giving them. And I think this is one of the key questions for 2020 is who are the Democrats going to give? Because right now we're still in our two camps, and right now it's about getting the vote out for this side or this side. And it's either you're with, this whole election in days to come is about Trump. Are you with him or are you against him? And we'll see about how the turnout turns.
One thing I feel compelled to say is that you had brave women and men, police officers, who intervened in Squirrel Hill. You had folks who stopped that shooter in Louisville, Kentucky. You had these people putting themselves in grave danger. These are women and men who have different political beliefs. Some of them are Republicans, some of them are Democrats, some of them support the president, others absolutely do not, yet they were able to come together to work effectively. And I think that one dynamic you see happen is that we tend to invest a lot in our politicians. We identify with them. And so the problem is that you have these distinctions getting blurred. You have people who exploit a certain climate, people who are hateful, dangerous people. This gentleman who sent bombs threatened Florida Power and Light in 2002 with an attack. You have these people who will have a pre-existing narrative. They will cook up this hatred. They will connect it to various other things. But then there are other Americans who support this or that political cause who then feel as though, wait a second, are you trying to silence me when I have a legitimate concern about this or that issue? That further deepens the political divide. That further pits us one against another. And I think it's really important to remember, again, these public servants, these ordinary, decent people, they come in many different shapes, sizes, and colors, and political convictions. So let's keep that in mind.
That's something we learn again and again and again, but then that gets back to the question, what responsibility do political leaders have to encourage that and not its opposite?
So this is not a both sides moment. And I think anybody that actually acts like this is a both sides moment, the president has a special responsibility at times like this. I think the country out there as a whole is not as tribalized as what Washington is, doesn't view politics the same as the president does, doesn't access those levels of hate and discourse that he does. But the president has a special responsibility. I'm not Michelangelo, but I can paint by number. And when you string together the president's actions, and you string together the president's words, and you string together all those things he done, let's not forget that what happened in Pittsburgh was because this man was radicalized because of the language of the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. He was mad that refugees and immigrants were giving whatever he considered special privileges in the course of this. And let's
reference the caravan.
And let's also not forget that within this week, the president proudly claimed himself a nationalist and proudly castigates the immigrants, the struggling families, the refugees that are walking miles and miles. And as he does that, not all Americans, most Americans are good people and all that. The president, in my view, the president has to come to terms with this and come to terms with his own responsibility and where we are as a country today.
Just briefly, Matt, there's so much to agree with in what you said, but we should not lose sight of the fact that this awful villain is someone who accused the president of being part of a Jewish conspiracy. He is someone who sees the president as a globalist who is seeking to destroy the country. This is someone who is a noxious, poisonous person who believed ideas that unfortunately did not begin with one president or another. Anti-Semitism is a pervasive, dangerous threat in nations around the world. Let's not lose sight.
Why has it risen dramatically in the last 2 years? Why? And the reason why he castigated the president, this man, was because he didn't think the president hated enough. He didn't think the president was anti-immigrant enough. That's why he was mad at the president. He thought the president wasn't bashing immigrants more than he wanted.
Absolutely, and the fact that you have Jewish members of his administration who are absolutely central to his larger political project. He was deeply suspicious, and I don't think you can really attribute this man's hatefulness solely to one political party or another.
We should never do that. I mean, in 1958, a Jewish synagogue. A Jewish synagogue. He's not.
Part of the problem.
I agree.
Pretty close.
I believe the leadership is lacking. But I'm a daughter of the South. This is a moment for us. I mean, my parents and grandparents had to come home and comfort us, knowing that we were at danger just because of what we look like. A Jewish synagogue was bombed in Atlanta in 1958. 4 little black girls were murdered 4 years ago. When is this hate going to stop? There's been a rise in anti-Semitism, a rise in racist, violent rhetoric in our country. I don't blame the president alone. I blame all of us. We have to tone this down, take responsibility for each other, come together, because our children, what are we going to tell our kids?
I couldn't agree with you more, because I think one of the most dangerous things I'm hearing when I'm out there in different states is people are saying, I'm more disillusioned and upset not because of Trump. He can lie, he can spin conspiracy theories. He's one guy, he's always done that. I'm more disillusioned because so many people are listening to him. He's going to leave office, and these people that had Trump signs in their yard are going to stay. The divide is dangerously wide, and when I look at my neighbors that I used to go to the store with or sit at baseball games with, now I think, they're anti-me. because they're listening to him. And this is why I think it's so deep and dangerous.
And the attacks on the media have worked. But the president still does have more than 2 years left in office at least.
Yeah.
So Tom,
Yeah.
the question to you is then what does he do now? What does he do in